Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review, and today from Mattel, in their DC Signature Collection, we are featuring Aquaman. So this is a much older action figure that dates back to 2013. If you're a longtime collector of Mattel's DC line of action figures, you'll remember their brief, short-lived era of the Signature Collection. So prior to the Signature Collection, Mattel was producing their line of DC Universe Classics. That's a very beloved line of action figures. They're very much on par with Toy Biz's and Hasbro's Marvel Legends. They were a 6-inch scale line of action figures, and they pretty much made figures of almost everybody. It was crazy. Fans were very fond of that toy line, and at a certain point, the toy line kind of went on hiatus, and instead Mattel offered, they still offered DC figures, but it was more so through an online model of like action figures. So this was something you couldn't buy at standard retail. I think you had to go through like MattyCollector.com and some other online retail outlets to obtain this figure. The nice thing with these action figures is that they really raised the bar from what was previously known as DC Classics. A lot of the figures had very unique sculpts and bucks, so it was just kind of cool. You were getting some really nice looking action figures, but the hard thing was that, at this time, I think the online shopping model wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And I think, for the most part, some collectors, much like myself, were kind of out of the loop on these action figures, and we didn't return back to the Mattel stuff until they revisited DC with their DC Multiverse line of action figures. All right, so with that being said, let's focus on Aquaman here. I've said this in other videos. 90s Aquaman is my favorite version of the character. If you're a longtime Aquaman reader of the comic books, you'll remember this being from like the Peter David era of Aquaman. It's very different in his appearance in terms of, when compared to the much more evergreen, iconic Aquaman. The one with the short blonde hair and the orange and green scale mail. For a lot of like older fans, that's like the Aquaman that they'll always remember from like their childhood. But for me, even though I grew up during that time period of the late 70s, early 80s, this one's the one that is my favorite version. I think Arthur just looks amazing. He has the nice long flowing hair, the beard, he has the gladiatorial armor, and then he has the hook hand. It's such a really well done figure, and the character design I think is just awesome. And then on the back we have a nice bio on Aquaman. So I got this at a flea market, and the box was beat to hell, and I got this figure for a really, really good price, so I couldn't say no. And let's take a look at Aquaman right now. Very stoked to add this to my collection. This is a design that I hope McFarlane Toys, does, hopefully in the near future, because I think it'd be such a crime if they never tapped into like, doing this 90s era of the character. And let's get this guy out if he'll come out. Get out of here. There we go. Alright, so we have the Mattel DC Signature Collection Aquaman. This is 90s Aquaman at his finest. It's such a beautiful figure. And he's held down with some ties. Let's cut these off. Wow, this is a great figure. One of my favorite stories that had 90s Aquaman or early 2000s Aquaman was, I think it was the graphic novel Earth 2, written by Grant Morrison and illustrated by, I think, Frank Quitely. There's a beautiful scene where I think the Justice League are taking on the crime syndicate. And then Arthur, I think he's like standing in a fountain. And then he just like takes out his arm and he shoots his hook hand out. And it's such a cool looking sequence in the book. And that's like one of those things that just kind of like, I don't know, just really stood out and just kind of like left an impression on me. Great looking figure. The sculpting is really well done. Even though this figure is very dated in terms of like the articulation and the action figure engineering, it's still a really nice piece. That head sculpt is amazing. It really captures the seriousness of Arthur, and he has a sense of like authority and presence about him. You know, once this character walks into a room, he really commands your attention. I like the shade of silver on the arm. It's kind of like a nice satin finish. It's not very glossy. The flowing hair is really well done. You know, it's sculpted a lot better than some of the action figures today. The hair, it looks cool. A nice shade of green for his pants. The scale mail is nicely sculpted. Nice, clean, really crisp design work. He has the fins on the back of his legs. And the articulation scheme, it's very, you know, reminiscent of that DC classic style that Mattel was known for during the late 90s and early 2000s. His head rotates, arms move, they go out, bicep cut, single pinned elbow, I think articulated wrists. He has ab crunch, doesn't really crunch forward too much. Arching back, not so much either. It feels like it could go further, but I don't want to force it. Swivels at the waist. It's a little bit tight on my figure. Kicks up. His legs kick out, and they kind of feature the antiquated like T-joint for the hip. There's a cut above the knee, so you can swivel there. Single pinned knee, articulated ankle. And overall, beautiful looking action figure. For size comparison with a McFarlane figure, here's the McFarlane designed Batman. Keep in mind the older McFarlane figures are much larger than the newer ones. And then here he is next to a Marvel Legends. As you can see, you know, 6-inch scale. It works nice. So yeah, very, very stoked on this. So glad to add this to my collection. You know, I'm such a big fan of 90s Aquaman. It's like my favorite design of the character. Alright, so with that being said, let's wrap this one up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning viewer subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one. Alright, later.